Welcome to the Native Connections Training and Technical Youth Connection Strategies for Developing and Maintaining a Strong Youth-Led Wellness Movement webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording with all documents will be available on the Native Connections website in the near future. Again, my name is Barb Smutek. I am a member of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, and I'm located in Michigan. I'm the Native Connections Communication Coordinator, and I will be your moderator for today to introduce our team today. We have two presenters. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Charlie Brissett and Robert McRorie. They'll be sharing their stories with you after our opening. Before we officially get started, it is my honor and privilege to ask Grantee Technical Assistant Connie O'Mara to open our webinar today. Connie, are you available?
Yes, thank you, Miigwech, Barb. As she said, my name's Connie O'Mara. I'm one of the Grantee Technical Assistants. All of you communities are always in my prayers. I'm a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation from Shawnee, Oklahoma. I really feel it's an honor to say the prayer for this wonderful youth presentation today, and I know you'll find it inspiring and helpful for your communities. I've been so far very inspired by our youth presenters. We're really glad you're with us today. Ahau Mamagosnan, Miigwech for the teachings and blessings of our seven grandfathers to help our people and our children live in harmony with the world. Miigwech for the four directions that guide our prayers when times are good and when times are hard. We ask you to bless our families, our elders, our veterans, and especially our youth, Mamagosnan. They are the leaders of tomorrow. Please continue to bless them with the values of humility, wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, and truth. Help them always feel loved and cared about, so they will pass this love to future generations and keep our community strong. Blessings to all. Iyo Miigwech.
Miigwech, Connie, thank you so much for starting us off in a good way today. Today's webinar is focused on strategies for youth. I want to remind everyone, especially for our Native Connections grantees, that when we say youth, we are referring to individuals up to the age of 24. This is the definition for all of our Native Connections grantees by SAMHSA. So as we say the word youth, just remember we're talking not to the up to the age of 18, but to the age of 24. And Mark, I do see we have some chat with some technical difficulties. If you could help out there, I'd appreciate it. Okay, for today's webinar, through a mixture of storytelling and interactive questions and discussions, we will be covering four main topics. These topics include understanding youth, engaging with youth, empowering youth, and then also sustaining youth-led movements. Please keep these four topics in mind as Robert and Charlie share their personal stories of resilience and during our interactive panel discussion we have later today. We have three main objectives for today's webinar. Our objectives include introducing all of you to our two young tribal leaders with inspiring stories of resilience, learning some strategies for developing and maintaining youth-led movements through storytelling and conversation, and also sharing some helpful and relevant resources. So we're going to be starting off with a quick polling question just to get an idea of everyone in the room. It will be helpful for our panelists today if you can please provide this information. So what is your current level of youth involvement with your Native Connections project? Do you currently have youth leaders actively involved in your project? Do you have some youth programming? Do you have a few youth who occasionally participate? Or at this point, do you have none, which that is okay too. We're just trying to get a good idea of the current participants in the room. All right, wonderful. It looks like nearly half of you have some youth programming going on, which is fantastic. And we have a few that have a few youth who occasionally participate. And then also we've got a couple of you with youth leaders actively involved. So that is wonderful. We will keep this in mind as we move on today. We still have some votes coming in. But wonderful. We will definitely try to gear our discussion to what will be the most relevant for all of you. And again, please feel free to use the chat box for any questions or comments as we're moving on throughout the webinar. So as I introduce our panel, I do have a little bit of background I'd like to share. Before I started doing this work with providing support for Native Connections and serving as your Native Connections webinar moderator, I worked for my tribe, which is the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians in the Education Division. For over 10 years, I provided educational and cultural programming for K through 12 youth in my Native community, and I served as an advisor for the Bawating Anishinaabe Tribal Youth Council. It was through my work with Education and Tribal Youth Council that I met Charlie and Robert as they were young leaders, and it's been really my pleasure to continue to work with them as they've returned to their communities and are now serving as mentors themselves and as they continue their work as young professionals. Their stories are powerful examples of resilience and life experiences of our strong tribal young people. As they tell their stories, please remember our 4 key areas of understanding, engaging, and empowering youth, along with sustaining youth-led movements. Throughout storytelling, they will touch on each of these items by sharing their lives with all of you. And I will now turn this over to Charlie.
Anin Bojo, miigwech gejemnado, miigwech Barb for that wonderful introduction, and miigwech for everyone for making time to join us on this webinar today. I'm going to do a traditional Anishinaabe introduction. Nimida Magizi Kwe Indigenous Makwa Ndodem Bawating Minwa Nopaming Ndonjaba Charlie Brissett Indigenous. So what I said there was my spirit name is Dancing Eagle Woman. I am Bear Clan. I'm from Bawating, or what is known today as Sault Ste. Marie, which is the top of the mitten there, if you can see in the top right-hand corner. And I'm also from Hessel, which is not on that map because it's a much smaller area. And my English name, my given name, is Charlie. I currently work as a community health educator for the Sioux tribe, Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians in northern Michigan, but I consider myself more of an Indigenous health and wellness educator because I'm often doing things more on my own time with my people and community to bring optimal health and well-being to others and to help them really try to reach their potential. And I also work on the side as a wellness trainer and personal trainer and wellness coach. So just to give you guys a little bit of background to what has led me to being who I am today. I went to a tribal charter school for the first 8 years up until 8th grade, where I was fortunate enough to have an extra hour of culture class every day. In that culture class, we were fortunate to learn the Anishinaabe language, Ojibwe language. We had traditional instruction like learning how to tan hides, build wigwams, build canoes, and all sorts of things like that. From there, I transferred to a small public high school down in Cedarville, and it was also at that time where I moved on to the reservation. And so this reservation was really small, and this is also when my cousin actually talked me into attending my first tribal youth council meeting, which I was really apprehensive to go. I'm very shy, and I like to kind of keep to myself. So she talked me into it, though, and I ended up loving Tribal Youth Council and stayed with the program all throughout high school. And so I definitely attribute a lot of my success today and a lot of my motivation and ambition to participating in Tribal Youth Council when I was younger. When I moved down to this public high school, I also got very sick my sophomore year with Graves' disease, which is a thyroid condition. And so this thyroid condition got so bad to the point where the muscles behind my eyes swelled up, and so my eyes kind of stuck out of my head a little bit, so I got the nickname Bug Eyes. So it kind of made the next 2 years of high school pretty unbearable. I lost a lot of weight, and I barely had enough energy to keep up with my mom doing basic household chores. I remember not being able to stand up the whole time to fold a set of laundry. So I also remember a time, because I was on the golf team, where we'd have to walk all 18 holes with our golf bags, and I had to stop and sit down at every hole. And because I didn't know what was going on at the time, I just thought that I was really out of shape, and I thought that I wasn't good enough basically to participate with all the other high school athletes that I was playing with. So ultimately, these things led me to pursue health and wellness at Northern Michigan University, which is in Marquette. So that's even further north than Sault Ste. Marie in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. That bottom picture there on the bottom left-hand corner, that's a panoramic picture of the top of Sugarloaf Mountain. So you can see it's very, very pristine, very beautiful up there. So while going to school up there, I fell in love with, of course, nature and being outside, but also the abundance of outdoor recreation that was available up there. While I was at NMU, I also had the opportunity to join the Native American Student Association. We did things like put on our annual powwow, the annual food taster. We brought a lot of guest speakers, and I actually was the student project coordinator for what we called the Medicine Wheel Academy. It was a 2-year grant where we got to bring Native high school youth from the Midwest, from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Lower Michigan, up to campus at Northern, and they got to experience what college life was like, what different classes would be like, and we also got to expose them to health fields such as nursing and radiology and things like that. And Native Americans are pretty underrepresented in the health fields. So from there, I applied to graduate school in Texas. I attended graduate school at the University of Texas in Austin, and it was definitely one of the hardest experiences of my life. I actually realized later that it was somewhat traumatic for me, and it's taken me a couple of years to recover from that. I received my master's in health behavior and health education with a portfolio in Native American and Indigenous studies. And through this research, the title of my thesis, the title of my research was "You Heal the Spirit, Anishinaabe Adaptations to Historical Loss and Trauma." So it was in this research that I used both quantitative and qualitative research methods to basically study the effects of historical trauma and intergenerational trauma. I was lucky enough to attend the International Annual Native American and Indigenous Studies Association Conference in Washington, D.C. So you can see that picture there on the top right. That was me visiting Washington, D.C., which was pretty much one of the coolest experiences of my life so far. And around that same time, one of my friends was a second grade class teacher, and she invited me to come to her class and teach students about the Native American culture, specifically Anishinaabe culture. The incredible thing about this experience was the kids were absolutely enthralled by everything that I had to say. They were like sponges. They soaked up everything. They learned Anishinaabe language. They learned how to spell Anishinaabe words. And afterwards, they even sent me handwritten letters with the language. I taught them how to say my Indian name, and they sent drawings and stuff like that. And they thanked me because otherwise they wouldn't have learned this stuff in school. So I want to put a question out there to our audience, to you guys. What is, sorry about that. So do you feel that historical or intergenerational trauma is experienced by the youth in your area or in your programs? Yes or no, maybe, or not really sure. So some examples that I've heard from people that I've worked with in the past include things like a loss of language, loss of their traditional cultural language, a loss of knowledge about their own culture, not really knowing their traditions and their culture and where that stuff comes from. I'm definitely getting a lot of yeses here. So if you guys could, and if you guys feel comfortable, you could share maybe some of the ways that you feel that it's expressed in the chat box in the bottom there. That way we can kind of see what kinds of things you're experiencing in your areas with youth. Some other things that I've heard in the past are kind of like a disconnect between generations from the youth to our elder population. So there's kind of a disconnect between our youth and our elders. Some other experiences of intergenerational trauma are things like mental illness or depression or anxiety. So got a good amount of people saying yes here. So and I see some people are typing down in the chat box. So feel free to share some of those things that you guys feel you experience in those youth programs and those youth that you work with on a regular basis. So A little bit about what I do now. As I said, I work full-time as a health educator for the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians in Community Health. It's great because in this position, I get to kind of bridge the gap between culture and wellness. It's easy for us to say and almost intuitive for us to think that culture and traditional knowledge go hand in hand with optimal health and well-being. However, from an academic and clinical standpoint, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to kind of empirically link these two concepts. So some other things that I've done in this position, I've coordinated harvesting classes, youth wellness programs. I've had the opportunity to educate students and community members about tobacco-free lifestyles and ceremonial tobacco use, native crafting, and things like that. Outside of work, I also do some consulting work with a local museum on some of their grant projects. One recently that we did involved creating a feature wall for the Native American and First Nations boarding school experience. And then we're currently working on an Anishinaabe Veterans Memorial to be completed by this Veterans Day. So through opportunities like this, I've had the chance to gather stories and testimonies from boarding school survivors and their families, and veterans and family members of veterans who walked on. So I definitely consider it a blessing to be able to hear these stories and to allow those stories to continue through the work that I do. I've also done some public speaking engagements about the boarding school experience and about the effects of intergenerational and historical trauma. So miigwech, everybody, for participating, and miigwech, Barb, and everybody for allowing me to be here to present. I'm going to pass this off to Barb.
Miigwech, Charlie, thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you to everyone who has been typing into the chat box. All of this information is being read by our panelists and our speakers, and this will be very helpful as we move on into our panel discussion. But before we do that, just know that we are reading your chat. We appreciate you participating. But now allow me to hand this over to Robert McRorie, who will share his story with us. Robert. Robert, are you on mute? Thank you for holding on there with us, folks. We are just getting Robert connected here so he can share his story.
Anin, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Rob. Please go ahead.
Manadu Benesi Indijnikov, Migizi Dodem Bawating Dojaba. Bojo, I said my spirit name is Spirit Bird. I am from the land of the Great Rapids, which is our homeland for Sioux Tribe in the very northern part of Michigan. And I'm from the Eagle Clan. I'm 29 years old, from Sioux Tribe of Chippewa Indians. So I was born at a low-income family on our local reservation, where the majority of people are low-income, but I had the privilege to watch my dad work extremely hard to purchase our own home. And he always told me that was our way of giving back to the people, so that way it would provide another home that was open for another family to use. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, which caused a little bit of trauma in my life. And I went to the same local high school or tribal school as Charlie did. Oh, hold on. After 8th grade, I switched to our public school system, where I really realized there was a lot of inequality between the people who lived on the reservation and the people who did not, because I saw how much more opportunity that they really had than we did. And that's when I really realized that there was a very big inequality and a difference within them. I started using drugs when I was 13 years old. I started with marijuana and alcohol, which really really stressed, put a lot of stress on my life. And so when I was about 15, my best friend introduced me to the Tribal Youth Council, which I really did not have any interest in going to at the time, but he promised that there was smudging there and free food. So I did show up, and that's where I met Barb. And I really started working with the youth. I lived a double life at this time, as I like to call it, where I was struggling with drugs and alcohol, but I also had a job where I would have to go to work and then be a good role model for kids, which I really enjoyed because I knew that my life outside of work and outside of the Tribal Youth Council wasn't what I wanted to portray to other people and have them live that kind of life. I really struggled in school because I didn't think school was for me or useful at all. So I began to not show up to school, and so my drug use became more prevalent during this time. So I dropped in and out of high school, I think twice. I started using heavier drugs between the ages of 15 and 17 while still trying to maintain a job, but I was conscious enough to my decisions to where I knew that I couldn't be around youth in that state of mind, so I was in and out of work at the same time. When I was 19, my mom passed away, and she was taken by the person that she was with, who then took his own life. And this is really the time when I realized that my drug use had turned from taking drugs socially and to have fun to really a point where I used it as a coping mechanism, where I really didn't care how much I took and what it did to me at the time. So at 19 years old, I had a drug overdose that put me in a coma for an amount of time, and my family was told that I may or may not wake up from that. And so when I woke up, I realized what it actually did to my entire family. And that was the time when I made a conscious decision that I would never touch another drug or alcohol again. And so at that time, I became a totally different person, and at this time I had to completely restart my life. So I didn't really know where to go or what to do, but my dad and my stepmom had talked me into going back to school, but high school graduation was completely out of the question at the time because I had only earned 5 high school credits and it took 24 to graduate. I was 19 years old and didn't have any jobs at the time. So I really started from scratch at that time, and I did the first thing that I could think of and got a GED and really didn't know where I was going to go from there. And then my dad had talked me into going to college, and since I really didn't have any better answer for him, I decided to go back to school once again after receiving the GED. And that's when my career really took off because I had a brand new start and I was no longer addicted to drugs and alcohol. So growing up, I really always go back to the only hope that I really had was with the Tribal Youth Council. And even though I struggled a lot during those times, it was the role models and mentors that I had in that time, such as Barb and a couple other really caring adults who never gave up on me no matter what struggles I was going through. So I always go back and say the biggest reason I made it is because I had that support system no matter what was going on in my life. So I'd like to ask a question to our participants here. Does your community or tribe have an active tribal youth council at this time? We have some yeses coming in, some no's, maybe. So those of you who said yes, that's great. And if you could type in the chat box to let us know if you're involved in it, and if so, how you're involved in it. Those of you who said no or maybe, my suggestion would be to get one as soon as possible. And I'm going to leave my contact information at the end of this, so that way you guys can contact me if you guys would like to. I have started 2 tribal youth councils myself and have been a member of one since I was 15. And I'd be more than happy to walk you guys through that. So after I became sober and got back into college, I took many jobs, and a couple of them I started my education career with the Youth Education Activities Services as an activities assistant, and then I took a job working for our Head Start, where I worked in both preschool classrooms and Head Start classrooms as a teacher's aide. Shortly after that, I was offered a job at our local alternative school, and that's where students go who may struggle with the regular curriculum or social anxiety issues, behavioral issues, or they just need help with credit recovery in smaller class sizes, which that provides those students with the additional resources that they need to succeed in the public education system. After I worked as the Native American parapro for that school, I was offered the job as the advisor, where my job was to counsel students and help them with any extra needs that they have, and also help them make a blueprint for their future and draw out a timeline with them, and really change their mindset to become really goal-oriented so they could succeed after high school. I began working with a team of community members that came together who recognized the need in our community for more youth programming, and the result of that was a Boys and Girls Club who focused on ages grades 6 to 12, and through that we really developed some good programming. So I took the role on as the director for that Boys and Girls Club up until recently when we determined that the club had been successfully started and the programs were all in place. So through my work, I've gained much professional experience, including community needs assessment, community organizer, public speaking, program development, youth recruitment and retention strategies, and targeted interventions, which we will get into in a little bit during our panel discussions. So after the Boys and Girls Club, I had realized that I had been preaching to students to follow their dreams, which is one of the things that led me to being a Dream Starter, which is a grant program funded by Running Strong for American Indian Youth. And Billy Mills and the team of Running Strong staff choose 10 Dream Starters each year for the last 5 years who they consider to be Dream Starters for American Indian Youth. And the grant recipients of this program receive $10,000 to start a project in their community that resembles their dream. And my dream was to bring our culture into the public school system, because the charter school that Charlie and I had attended had always had culture involved in it. However, the public school system was really lacking the culture aspect. So I created a high school classroom in our community that provided students with culture and spiritual teachings, where they learned how to make hand drums, ceremonial drum, dream catchers, the lodges of our people, and received all the teachings of our culture. And at the same time, they were able to earn a high school credit towards graduation. So after I worked for the Boys and Girls Club, this is when I go back to realizing that I had been telling all of my students for the last 10 years that they have to follow their dreams to find their true passion in life. And in the process of doing so, I realized that I had this old dream from the past. Since I was about 15 years old, my dream was to open my own martial arts gym. My family had done martial arts since I was born and far before that. So I was born into martial arts, and that was really my passion. So after realizing that, hey, I've been telling the youth to follow their dream, I decided that I actually have to do so too. If I'm going to walk the walk, I have to talk the talk. If I'm going to talk the talk, I have to walk the walk and really chase my dreams. I decided that I didn't want to end up 80 years old wondering what this dream could have been. So I decided to go all in on it, and I'm now the owner of McRorie Martial Arts and Combat Fitness, which runs programs online, and we have a home gym here in town. We focus on helping people with personal goals. It's not just for people who are competing in the martial arts, but it's also for people who are focusing on their own life. And we do personal training, weight loss coaching, strength and conditioning, boxing, wrestling, and mixed martial arts, and then wellness coaching as well. So that's my story, and I'd like to thank you guys all for listening, and please feel free to ask any questions if you would like. Miigwech.
Oh, miigwech, Rob. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and for you too, Charlie. I think having both of you share a little bit of your history and your stories has been really powerful for us. We're now going to transition to some discussion on the 4 key elements we talked a little bit about at the beginning. And our first topic is understanding youth strategies. And for this, you can see that there is a larger chat box to the right side of the screen. And I'm going to have both Charlie and Robert kind of walk through some strategies they'd like to share with everyone. But for everyone in the room, too, I'd like you to use that larger chat box to, number one, pose me questions, but also feel free to reply to one another, answer any questions in case our panelists might not be able to get to them. But then also, excuse me for the large chat box, but then also feel free to have conversations in there that we can kind of use to have an ongoing conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Charlie first. And Mark, maybe you can help us with our background layout a little bit. It looks a little strange with the extra large chat box. And I'm going to give this to Charlie to kind of walk through some strategies she wants to share with all of you on understanding youth strategies while Mark works on our chat layout. So let me go ahead and turn this over to Charlie to walk us through. You should see a slide right now that says understanding youth, see, listen, and legacy burden equals soul wound. So Charlie, please walk us through that.
Miigwech, Barb, miigwech. Okay, so for me, for understanding youth, for this first topic here, so I think being a coach, and I'm sure Robert can attest to this too, since he also does some personal training. But being a coach and working with people, one of the biggest things is you have to meet them where they're at, and I think it's the same thing for youth. We have to meet them where they're at, I think, but before even that, we have to observe, and we have to see what's going on, how they're acting, how they're behaving. Are they acting out? Are they doing some repetitive behaviors that may not be the best for them? Or are they trying to communicate to us in some way and trying to let us know, like, hey, something's going on in my life? Or are on the other end of that spectrum, are they being very withdrawn? Are they disengaged? Are they not really communicating or not participating? I know for myself, I was definitely on that latter end of that spectrum. As I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of painfully shy. I very much identify as an introvert, and so as I mentioned earlier, I had no interest in attending Tribal Youth Council. And so my cousin she basically had to drag me over to Tribal Youth Council. But once she did, I found this really supportive environment, and I found this. Actually, there was an adult there with Tribal Youth Council that I noticed was there every time and was always offering support, and I was very comfortable in that space. So not only should we be observant of our youth and, you know, how they're behaving and maybe like trying to discern what exactly that means, but we also have to listen to them. We have to give them space to communicate with us. And one of the important things I think for this age group to understand is that being up to the age of, you know, the mid-20s, the frontal lobe is not fully developed at this point. And so the frontal lobe is responsible for executive function or decision-making or rational logical thinking. And so for our youth, that area of the brain is not fully developed yet. And so I feel like it's really our responsibility. It's up to us to be able to observe, pay attention, really try to listen to them and read between the lines. What are they trying to communicate to us? What are they feeling? Do they feel unsafe in this environment to engage in certain activities, or, you know, and then it's up to us to be able to provide that safe space. In addition to that, why I have the legacy burden and the soul wound box there is because as I was doing the research for my graduate studies in this concept of intergenerational trauma, some things that came up directly from participants that I talked with were really, really eye-opening and interesting comments. In the literature, there is this topic or this concept of the soul wound, and I have a quote here from one of my former participants from years ago that I think kind of describes it very well. This participant said, the next generations have to account for, they kind of have to pretend that they're part of this tradition that was attacked hundreds of years ago by colonialism. So for instance, little kids growing up now, their friends are like, what's it like living on the reservation? And they kind of have to defend something that they know nothing about. So I think that there's this burden on the next generation that they have to live up to something that they don't really know about. And so again, I feel like it's up to us to, and I saw a question in the chat box earlier relating to that question that I posed about intergenerational trauma and how it's experienced. And somebody mentioned, how do we work with youth to help them understand how they're experiencing historical trauma? And so what I would say to that, and what I would say to this quote is, I think it's our responsibility to educate them and to offer them the information about our culture, about our history as Native Indigenous people in this area, and whether or not they actually use the information in a productive way, or whether or not they actually listen and comprehend and understand. We can't force them to do that, obviously, because they've got their own lives that they're living, but the best thing that we can do from our point of view is to give them that education, to give them that information, because then at least we've done our part in giving them the information, and then it's up to them to decide what they want to do with that information.
Oh, miigwech, Charlie, that was just some excellent responses for everyone on the topic of understanding youth. Rob, I would like to pass this over to you to see if you'd have anything to add on the topic of understanding youth, but also on the topic of engaging youth. What strategies have you found for either understanding and or engaging youth? And also, everyone, feel free to type in the larger chat box on the side to share any strategies you may have with others, to ask any questions, or even to make any comments on the topic at hand. And so, Rob, can you give us a strategy or two on understanding or engaging youth?
Yes, I think the biggest or the best way to understand youth is to have some of the same experiences as them and connect with them on that same level, to where you know where they come from and can also understand that they may have been dealing with some stuff their entire life that you know nothing about. So be really open to that. Youth engagement is super important, and I think the most important part of it is to mobilize youth to engage with themselves, because that's what we use for strategies with our Boys and Girls Club here, and also our tribal youth councils, is to really train our strong youth leaders to go out and really bring in other youth that are like them. So for the engagement pieces, to keep the ear to the ground and really get a feel for of what they need in their life and exactly what programs will help them succeed best. A lot of the generational trauma that Charlie talked about is really important in engagement too as well, because some of the kids become introverted because they don't know how to interact with other youth. So engagement really starts with the adults who are advising them, but to have good follow-through with youth engagement, you really have to learn how to mobilize the youth themselves.
Thank you, Rob. Charlie, strategies for engaging youth.
I think I would just like to add on to what Rob was saying, because I know for myself, with being introverted, and one thing, I know one big thing that led me to kind of open up and put myself out there and actually engage in some of the youth programs that I was in was having those adults and those mentors there present consistently. I think that was one of the biggest things. And, you know, being on the adult end now and working in the programs and working with youth and being that adult now, I can see how sometimes it can be sort of frustrating, because we're trying to reach out to youth and we're trying to show them that we're there and that we're being supportive, and sometimes they're just not, they're just not engaging with us, or they may not necessarily be interested that we're there for them. But I know for me, even if I wasn't actively reaching out to those adults that were in my life, knowing that they were there in case I needed them, and that they were there supportive and helping to kind of guide me into these roles that they saw that I was fit for, was really important for me. And just knowing that they were consistently going to be there, you know, it made me feel safe enough to put myself out there.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. I think I see someone typing in our strategies chat box. Please feel free to share any comments or questions here. You can ask questions directly of our panel or of anyone else in the room. And but while we're doing that, Rob, why don't you get us started? As we've talked a little bit about understanding youth and engaging with youth. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about empowering youth. Rob, can you share a couple strategies that you found to be helpful for empowering youth?
I think the most important thing about empowering youth is to make them feel ownership of the programs that they are involved in. I've been a part of many youth programs, both as a youth myself and as an advisor. And all of the ones that had the most success were the ones that really allowed the youth to drive what they were doing within their programs. Now, there has to be a balance of leadership from the adults as well as the youth. And so you have to really have clear goals, but don't make your goals separate from the youth. Share with them, here are our goals for you, and we want to know what your goals are as the youth programming. And this really makes them feel empowered because they feel like they have that ownership of their own program. So I would say make goals together that can be achieved on both sides of it. And when they feel like they're working with you and not for you, it really makes them feel empowered. So I would say that's the most important strategy to empowering youth, is to really make them feel like they're owners of their own program, and that also makes them feel a sense of responsibility to the program, and really drives its success.
Just to add on again to what you were saying, Rob, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that's great. I also think by empowering, or to empower our youth, I think we really need to celebrate their accomplishments, celebrate their successes, and even if it's not necessarily related to the program that we're running with them, it may be in their personal lives, but celebrating them and what they're good at, because then it shows our youth that we're genuinely interested in them and what's going on in their life and their interests, and that makes a big difference. That shows them that we are, there for them. So I think that's important as well.
Wonderful. We do have a question in the chat box about youth for forming a tribal youth council. And, you know, I think I would turn this over to Rob. Are you able to see the question in the chat box, and can you provide some additional comments on forming a tribal youth council? Do we pick the first kids who are interested in being in a tribal youth council? That's a great question.
No, I would suggest doing a promotion within your community and gather as many kids as you can to participate and present to them the idea that you are starting a youth council and focus on youth leadership. And that goes back to the empowerment and mobilizing your youth. Every youth council that I've been a part of that has been successful puts that leadership within the youth, and the adults, they don't take a back seat to it. They are really involved in the steering of it. However, the youth should be responsible for choosing their own leaders. So there's a general council which includes all of the youth who would like to participate, and then you hold elections that the youth gets to vote on their leaders, such as the president and the vice president and secretary, sergeant at arms, and the other positions within the council. So that would be my suggestion: is really step back and let the youth do the decision making under your guidance.
Thank you so much, Rob. As we continue on, as we're thinking about understanding youth, engaging youth, and empowering youth, let's now continue on and talk a little bit about sustaining momentum. And Rob, I had you start last time, so I'm going to go ahead and give this over to Charlie and ask Charlie, what are some effective strategies for sustaining momentum of youth programming? And also for all of you who are taking part in the chat box, please feel free to continue those questions, comments, and feel free to reply to one another's questions too. So thank you. Okay, Charlie, sustaining momentum.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to my head for sustaining youth programs is kind of exactly what Rob was saying. Allow the youth to be the ones to sustain the program. Have them be the decision makers. Have them be the ones coming up with the ideas of activities to do, and really allow them to be the leaders of the program, and develop it the way that the group kind of decides, because every group is going to be unique. Every group is going to be different in every environment, and so really allowing them to build that to their liking, I think, is what's going to make it sustainable. Another thing that I've witnessed as a good way to sustain the program is to allow the youth, or encourage the youth to reach out to other youth, maybe the next generation below them or younger than them, and recruit them for the program so that they can then turn into the mentors and mentor the younger generations and the younger youth to take part in the program, and eventually take those roles on as the older youth kind of move on into their own lives.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. Rob, would you like to add on to
that? Yeah, I think Charlie's absolutely right in empowering them to do so. I would just like to add that the best way to keep momentum, I've always found, is to keep them busy. If you're having meetings, once a month or once every 2 months, the youth really aren't engaged, and they're not going to be as mobilized or really involved. I would say at least have them participate in something once or twice a week. One could be a meeting where they discuss their plans, talk about budgets or fundraisers, and then the other thing would be to really get them involved in some community organizations with nonprofits. Our youth council really participates a lot with our local elders home, and they will go in there and throw parties on holidays for them, play checkers with them on their game days. They love bingo with the elders. So that's one of the ones that we really involve them with. And they also go to our local Head Starts and read to the kids and help clean their classrooms when school's not in session. So that would be my biggest suggestion as for keeping the momentum is to keep them busy, and also just so that way they're aware of all the activities, I would draw out a timeline of the year and make a very detailed calendar of what activities the youth council will be participating in, and then have a sign-up list under each activity, so that way the kids feel more empowered when they get to actually write their name on a list, and that gets them more committed to each of the activities as well. So it's not just something that you as an advisor should, like I said earlier, take a total backseat to, but really allow them to choose the organizations that they're involved with and where they put the funds that they receive from fundraising. Our council is really good about donating. They don't take too much of their own money and spend it on things like shirts and stuff, although we encourage them to quite often. They have been very good about being charitable with their funds. So that's my biggest suggestion, is keep them very busy and keep a detailed calendar of all of the things that they suggest that they want to do, and then hold them accountable by having sign-up lists, and then continue that engagement with them.
Rob, thank you so much. And actually, Charlie and Rob, thank you for sharing strategies with us today. And I see we still have multiple attendees who are typing, so please go ahead and keep the typing going, and feel free to continue to interact with one another in the chat box. In the meantime, since we are getting close to the conclusion of our webinar, I do want to take the time to share a few resources with everyone. And Charlie and Rob, feel free to continue to interact with the chat box. In the meantime, I do want to let you know that we will be providing email addresses for Charlie and Rob, and also myself, at the conclusion of today's webinar, so feel free to email any remaining questions. And in the meantime as well, I'd really like to share some resources with all of you as you continue your chat discussions with any comments you have for our panelists or for one another. Also, feel free to share any resources in the chat box, whether you know of other websites or resources that may be helpful. Feel free to go ahead and share those with everyone. The first resource I'd like to share, of course, are some of our other Native Connections youth webinars. There is the link there. Also, below our main window here, we have a list of web links, so you can actually click on those and open up those links. Or if you want to download today's presentation, if you download the file called PowerPoint, you'll have all of these slides, and you have the links within the slides, so you can save them that way. And of course, after the webinar is complete, it will be put on the Native Connections webinar webpage, so you can go back and listen to it or download it later. But these were some of our previous webinars, all on youth topics. And then also we have some online resources for everyone. Native Connections did do a podcast on youth engagement, and you can click on that link there to listen to the podcast. And then we did ask our grantee technical assistants to share a few helpful web links that they thought all of you would appreciate. And so we have the wearenative.org, which is resources for youth by youth. And then we also have another tribalyouthprogram.org, which has some really great interactive elements there. And so please feel free to check out those web links. And again, if you'd like to download the PowerPoint, you can access these links through that way, or you can download them through the web links box. And then lastly, we have two links that are specific for Tribal Youth Council formation, which we've had a lot of questions on today. The first one is Alaskans Changing Together, but there is great resources there for people either in Alaska or outside, great information. And also we do have the link to United National Indian Tribal Youth, which is Unity, which I think has been mentioned both in the chat box and in some discussions today. And they've got some great resources for establishing a Unity-affiliated Tribal Youth Council. And so for any of you who are interested in either starting a youth council, supporting a youth council you already have, or just learning more about it, you can definitely follow any of these links or reach out to Robert and Charlie after today's presentation. We do have a few upcoming webinars. Again, all webinars are at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is just a reminder, a save the date for everyone because we do send out emails with registration details for each. So please watch for your emails to get the reminders for those. On July 17th, we have Addressing Opioid Use in Our Communities, Part 2. We also have Culture is Prevention on July 24th. And then we do have Youth Empowerment and Social Media on August 14th. And again, this is just kind of a save the date because we will be sending out email reminders with registration details for each of these. Now, let me just take a moment to again say thank you so much to our panelists and everyone who interacted with us today or everyone who is just taking a moment to listen in. Here is our contact information for all of our presenters. Feel free to send them either Robert or Charlie an email. You can reach out. We do have their phone numbers there. So if you have any follow-up questions or would just like to reach out to them to talk about any of these topics a little bit longer, feel free to do so. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us today.